all the major indicators are there for our B&L Productions v. Newsom lawsuit to be taken up by the Supreme Court. That's our challenge on the ban of gun shows on state-owned property in the state of California. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That is right, we have another lawsuit at the tippy top level of the judicial system is on the move. That of course is B&L Productions. To talk us through it today, we have brought on managing attorney at Michelle and Associates. That of course is Tiffany Chevrant. Tiffany, thanks for being with us in person today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. SHOT Show, it's a lot of fun.
Heck yeah, and it's always good to be able to sit down in person and talk about stuff as opposed to on the phone, so thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And guys, before we jump into this today, please, as always, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the videos. It really helps with the algorithms to push this message as far and wide as possible. As always, we're looking to educate on the litigation, legislative, and the cultural efforts in California. So, Tiffany, before we get to the more recent news, can you just go ahead and remind everybody what is B&L Production? What's the original law here that we're dealing with and the original complaint that we're dealing with?
Sure. So B&L Productions goes way back several years, and it's actually the Crossroads of the West gun show case that we're fighting in California. And this all started back several years ago, I want to say maybe 2017, where the state said you can no longer have gun shows on state property because they didn't want to facilitate the purchase and sale of firearms in California on state property. So we brought a lawsuit that was against Del Mar Fairgrounds specifically. We won that lawsuit. They ended up settling with us, and then the state didn't like that, so they brought back another lawsuit. And this time in Orange County, and they wanted, and also Del Mar again, and they wanted to try to bring back the case, but make it a little more specific. So this time they said you cannot sell firearms or ammunition or precursor parts, and one of them at state property. And so basically they were saying we're not shutting down the gun show, but you just can't sell guns or ammunition at the gun show, which we all know makes no sense whatsoever. And so since that time, we won in the lower courts, the Orange County case. We lost in the Del Mar case the second time. Both of those cases went up to the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit heard those. And we are now on our way to the Supreme Court, which is huge. We have a cert petition in to the Supreme Court to hear that.
Yeah, so I mean, originally you got a little bit of a back and forth, and I mean, even prior to the legislature coming into action, I've said this multiple times as we're following this lawsuit. This one is kind of near and dear to my heart because I would be going to the Fair Board meetings with you when you had all of these other advocacy groups who are anti-Second Amendment trying to talk to the Fair Boards in specific areas. I can remember Del Mar, Orange County, Ventura was also a big one. Mm-hmm. Cal Palace was a big one. You had these Moms Demand Action groups and a couple others, the Brady groups, who were appealing to their fair boards to say, hey, we want you to cut out the gun shows. Unfortunately for them, those grassroots movements didn't work because the Second Amendment grassroots movement was also showing up there saying, hey, if you actually are what you say you are and you want diversity on your fairgrounds, this isn't something that you want to take away. You've got a huge portion of your community that wants these gun shows here. Mm-hmm. And in every single one of those instances, the fairgrounds ended up siding with the 2A side, which is why we continued to see gun shows in Del Mar, in Orange County, and in Ventura and Cal Palace.
Well, why did they continue to side with us, though? They continued to side with us because they were afraid of getting sued. Well, because it was unconstitutional to ban, and the fair boards and their attorneys were telling them it was unconstitutional.
And perhaps unlike the state legislature and the governor and the attorney general here in California, they understood that wasting their constituents' money in a lawsuit that they knew they were going to lose, they actually cared about that, whereas Attorney General Rob Bonta, Governor Newsom don't really seem to care that they're wasting Californians' money in court just by enacting unconstitutional laws. But then you also kind of have this back and forth because they do institute the law in San Diego. They take away gun shows, and I think they put a moratorium on it first, right? If I remember correctly. They enacted it in Orange County as well, and as it's kind of going back and forth, we win the lawsuit in Del Mar. They try to make this whole thing about all state-owned property, which ends up getting condensed into Orange County. And then they finally get the law passed stating that you couldn't do it on any state property, which brings forth the challenge. So what are the actual challenges that are in this lawsuit? It's easy enough to say you're infringing on our Second Amendment rights. And it's also easy enough for them to say, we're not looking to take away your gun shows. And it's like, really, dude? Think about a reptile show. Fairgrounds hold reptile shows all the time, too. You find plenty of vendors at a reptile show that aren't selling reptiles. But if you take the reptiles out of that show, does that show really remain profitable and on their calendar? So essentially, yes, they are attacking the gun shows, but it's not necessarily just the Second Amendment that's implicated here in banning gun shows from the fairgrounds. What was actually in the original complaint?
Yeah, and actually, before I answer that, the sponsors of the bill actually have said in public many times they are banning gun shows, even though the legislation itself says, oh, no, we're not banning gun shows. We're just trying to get rid of the sale of items at these shows. The sponsors of the bill have been very clear that they are banning gun shows, and Newsom is one of those as well that's stated that. So this case is really more about the Second Amendment and First Amendment. Second Amendment, obviously, because they're not allowing firearms to be sold. Those are lawful products, and they should be sold under the state laws, just like a brick and mortar store. And that's exactly what happens at a gun show. Nobody walks out of a gun show with a gun the same day. Nobody, is skirting the law at gun shows. They're following the law. So it makes no sense to not have the sale of gun shows or guns and ammunition at a gun show. The other piece of that is the First Amendment right. And we have a First Amendment right as people coming together to associate, to speak about firearms, to talk about it. And it's not just about firearms. It's about talking about things in our government. Most of the viewers have probably been to a gun show, and if you haven't, you should go, because it's way more than just going and buying a gun. You have training going on. You have education as far as what are people's rights in the Second Amendment. And this encompasses this huge issue that the state forgot, I think, when they first passed this law, that people coming together in this way is really a culture of gun owners, and they're banning that with this legislation.
Well, we've also seen, I'm hoping that you can clear this up a little bit as far as the timeline is concerned, because what we've seen as far as gun shows being able to be scheduled, it's like there's periods where we had an opinion saying that the law was constitutional, yet gun shows were still being scheduled, and I guess that's the difference between an opinion and the implementation of that opinion. Can you walk us through the timeline of what this lawsuit has actually brought as far as gun shows being able to be scheduled or not, and what is the current status that we're at?
Right. So it's been really frustrating for a lot of people. They want to go to gun shows, they want to get their firearms, they want to get their ammunition, they think it's coming up, and then it gets canceled. And that's the timeline of the court system. We had a really bad ruling in the Ninth Circuit where they made up this new rule about what is the definition of a sale, something that has not been in any legal textbooks ever before. And I won't go down that road and get into the details of it, but it's completely made up opinion. And so when that happened, that judgment was issued, and we had this time period for several months while we waited on that judgment to come into play, where gun shows could still continue. And then once it was issued, the gun show stopped again. We were able then to go to the Supreme Court and try to petition the Supreme Court.
And we covered that on the channel, just the difference between an opinion and the judgment, and that was the time lapse that people were a little bit confused with. And we also covered the petition to the Supreme Court, but it seems like the check marks are kind of marked off. We continue to talk with Chuck on some of these other lawsuits, and what he is continuously saying is that what the Supreme Court is looking for is a final judgment. So we have that marked off for the B&L case. We have a final judgment, although it's a judgment that's not in our favor. It does mark that box off for the Supreme Court. We appealed to the Supreme Court. So where are we at now with it?
Well, we were supposed to hear something probably this week because the Supreme Court was taking our case into conference. And what that means is they take a case that's been petitioned to the Supreme Court for certiorari and they consider it. And they sit around a big conference table and they talk about what are the merits of the case. And that was supposed to happen this week. But we had not heard from the Supreme Court whether or not they wanted the state to file a brief in response to our brief to the Supreme Court. And so just last week we heard from the Supreme Court and they said they do want to hear from the state, which is good news. Usually that means there's an interest there by the justices. That means that they have something that they're concerned about and they're actually considering seriously the case. If they didn't have any kind of concern about it, then they wouldn't care. They would just deny cert, you're gone, and you're out of the process. But through this request, now we have the state that has to issue a response brief by middle of February, and then we come back with our reply brief the end of February, and then it goes forward from there, and they look at all of the information and decide how they want to handle the case.
So I guess toss that one into the bucket of optimism for 2025.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's still a couple more months of filing that need to happen before we'll actually know if they take the case. Do you expect, I guess, on your final thoughts, what does 2025 have to hold for this lawsuit? Do you expect to get an answer this year?
I don't know if we'll get an answer this year, but I really hope that they decide to take this case up. It is a First Amendment issue. It's a Second Amendment issue. It's a good case. The Ninth Circuit opinion was off the wall, crazy, and I think that the Orange County, the Superior Court judge that ruled in that case actually had much better, reasoning in his opinion. That's the one that we won, constitutionally, and so I really think that this is something that the Supreme Court could look at and go, yes, this is definitely the state overstepping its bounds and infringing on people's constitutional rights. And so we'll see. I mean, like I said, great news that they asked for additional briefing. We're really excited about that. And I hope to be able to come back on here and celebrate after this many years, because when you were talking about going to all these meetings, I had actually forgotten about that we used to go to those meetings because it's been so long ago. So we've been fighting this a very long time, and I really hope to be able to have like a celebration announcement on your show.
I will have the cups of champagne ready for you. I am certainly not just looking forward to, but expecting that time to come. Of course, as always, we always ask what the outlook is and timelines could be. We never actually know because the court system is the court system, but definitely it continues to feel like a time of optimism, and it feels like now is the time to recoup and to make gains. I feel like we're gonna end up getting that with here, but I do appreciate your time, Tiffany, for coming on and sharing with us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like videos like this and you want to see more, once again, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. By doing that, you can directly contribute to the litigative and legislative efforts here in the state of California. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.